I'm Jacob from Northrock Bikes. Today we're going to go over assembly of a Beach Cruiser bicycle. We have taken the bicycle out of the box and placed it somewhere we feel comfortable working on it. Located within your box is a parts box which contains the assembly instructions. You want to review these before you begin any steps related to assembly, and your owner's manual. Please take the time to review this document also before you use your bicycle. The first thing we need to do is remove the protective packaging from the bicycle. Please be careful during this step not to use anything sharp that would damage the frame, components, or tires of the bicycle. So now we have partially unpackaged the bicycle. We have a special consideration with this bike, and that is that it's equipped with fenders. So once you have the front wheel ready to be separated from the bike, you want to slowly slide it towards the front of the bicycle until the spokes come free from the crank arm. Leave the fender on the front wheel during this process. Once you have safely removed the wheel and fender from the frame of the bicycle, you want to carefully remove the fender from the spokes of the bike. Leave the protective packaging on and set the fender to the side. When removing the packaging from the handlebars, it's important to remember that they're chrome finished, so simply use your fingers on this part. It's easy to scratch this with tools. Our next step is to make sure that the fork blades are facing the correct direction. There are two ways to know this. The first is that there's a sticker on the blades of the fork. The arrow on the sticker should be facing the direction of forward motion. The other way that you will know is that the fork blades are swept. The sweep of the blades of the fork should be facing forwards. Next, we are going to install the stem and handlebars into the frame of the bicycle. Before you do that, a best practice is to put some grease inside the steering column of the bike. The stem comes packaged with a protective cap. You need to remove this before you install it. Now that we have greased the steering column, we're going to slide the stem into the steering column. Please take care that the minimum insertion mark is not showing. And gradually tighten the stem cap bolt. While you're doing this, please make sure that the stem lines up with the fork blades. A tip during this part of installation is to gradually tighten the stem bolt, taking pause after you tighten it to make sure that it is lined up with the head tube and forks of the bike. You also want to make sure that this bolt is secure but not overly tightened. Now that we have properly installed the stem into the frame of the bicycle, we're going to rotate the handlebars to a comfortable angle and tighten them in place using the bolt on the bottom of the stem. Tighten this bolt with a 6mm Allen key. Make sure that this bolt is tight, but again, do not over tighten this bolt. After I have installed the stem and handlebars, I like to recheck that everything is tight, and I also check at this point that the handlebars are centered in the stem. You will know this is the case when you cannot see any grooves on either side of the stem. To keep your saddle clean during this portion of installation, please put something between it and the ground. This bicycle comes with the saddle not installed on the seat post. So there's a couple of things that we need to talk about before we begin installation. First is that the saddle is equipped with rails, which you will use to mount it to the seat post. The seat post has grooves that you will use to install the saddle to the seat post. Finally, we need to rotate the reflector in order to gain access to the bolt used to install the saddle to the seat post. Next, we are going to rotate the top portion of the seat post clamp. This allows us to insert the seat post onto the rails of the saddle. Now we're going to install the rails to the clamp of the seat post by placing the seat post onto the saddle rails. Center the seat post on the rails. Rotate the top portion of the clamp so that it is parallel with the bottom portion. Now hold both portions of the seat post clamp, the top and bottom, with your fingers and tighten the bolt. Now rotate the reflectors so that it is facing the rear of the saddle. Today I showed you how I install saddles to seat posts. If you prefer, you can install the seat post into the frame of your bicycle prior to installing the saddle to the seat post. Next, we're going to install the seat post into the seat tube of the frame. As a best practice, put some grease inside the seat tube. Next, open the quick release. Slide the seat post into the frame. Make sure that the minimum insertion mark is not showing. And close the quick release. Now we're going to install the fender onto the bicycle. Included in your parts box, you will find 1 center bolt and 2 stay bolts. First, insert the center bolt with 1 washer through the front of the fork crown. Then install the curved spacer with the curved part facing the fork crown. Then slide the fender between the fork blades by angling it. Slide the fender bracket onto the bolt. Install your final washer and your nut. Do not tighten your center bolt until the wheel is installed. Now we're going to install the fender braces into the eyelet mounts. Hand tighten this bolt. Again, do not snug it until we have installed the wheel. Now we're going to install the front wheel. First, remove the protectors on the front hub. Then when we install the wheel, you want to make sure that it is facing in the correct rotational direction. You will know this by the arrow on the rim of the wheel. Tires which have a directional rotation also have an arrow on their sidewall. Now we're going to install the quick release into the front hub. During this step, please remember that there should be 1 spring on each side of the hub. The small portion of the spring should face the hub. During this process, we have left the packaging on the tips of the fork to protect them. Remove this. place the tips of the fork onto the hub and tighten the quick release, making sure that the fork blades are pressed firmly onto the hub. Final tightening is done by flipping the lever so that it leaves an indentation on the palm of your hand. Now that the wheel is installed, we can center the fender and tighten the center bolt. To do this, hold the nut on the back of the center bolt with a 10mm wrench and tighten the bolt using an Allen key. I have now tightened one of the fender braces. Now center the fender and tighten the brace on the other side. Repeat the process of centering the fender on the back wheel. Now we're going to install the pedals into the bicycle. The pedals are labeled left and right. It is important that you install the right pedal onto the right crank arm. Before installation, please place some grease on the threads of the pedal axle. And then hand tighten the pedal axle onto the crank arm. Ensuring that the threads are aligned with the crank arm, tighten the pedal axle by hand until it is flush with the crank arm. If you meet resistance, please back out and start over. Once you have hand tightened the bolt, use a wrench to snug it in. Please firmly secure the pedal onto the crank arm. When installing the left pedal, it is important to remember that the left pedal tightens counterclockwise. Again, firmly secure the pedal to the crank arm. Now use a bicycle pump to inflate the tires. The correct PSI is located on the sidewall of your tires. Lastly, install the white reflector on the front of your bicycle by sliding it onto its clamp. Check that the red reflector on the rear of the bicycle is facing directly behind you and is tight. Before taking your first ride, please make sure that all the bolts on your bicycle are tight and that everything is aligned properly. Please also take the time to review your owner's manual, wear a helmet, and have a great ride.